All right. It's 11 a.m. Eastern time, so good morning if you're in the Eastern time zone, or good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you're at in the world, and welcome back to another Hornet Security webinar. Today we're talking about 365 Permission Manager and how you can use it to elevate your compliance for Microsoft 365. As always, I'm your host for this Hornet Security webinar, Andy Serwich, and I got to apologize a little bit in advance here because I'm at the tail end of a little bit of a summer cold here, so which are always fun, right? But it wouldn't be a complete work year for me if I didn't do at least one webinar while dealing with head congestion. So my apologies that you guys are the lucky bunch that gets to experience this, but I think we'll be all right for this session. So we got a lot of stuff to get through. I'm just going to kind of dive right in here, and the first thing I want to do is just talk about our agenda for today. And so we're going to do a product overview of what 365 Permission Manager is. We're going to talk about why you need it. We're going to go over all of its functions and features. We're going to talk about a couple of key areas within the tool itself, some of my particularly favorite areas and heavy hitters. And then finally, I'm a firm believer of not killing people with PowerPoint. So I'm going to actually jump into a live demo environment towards the end of the session, and you can actually see this tool in action. Now, I have to give one more apologies here. My neighbor has decided to start mowing the lawn, so hopefully you guys can't hear that too much, but okay, he's gone now. Anyway, at that, we'll also end the session with some wrap up and more importantly, a quiz. Now, we do have 3 Amazon gift cards we're giving away, a $25 one and 2 $50 gift cards, and those will be given away during that quiz session during the end of the webinar here. And then after that, you get a chance to ask me some questions after that. So with that, let's kind of dive right in. So again, my name is Andy Serwich. I'm a security evangelist here at Hornet Security. I've been in the industry for a while. I'm a Microsoft MVP in the Cloud and Data Center Management competency. So my background has always been in infrastructure and security. So I kind of always approach new products, new tools in the industry from that perspective, and that's certainly how I'll be approaching the webinar today. If you have any questions or you think of something after today's webinar, you can always reach me at andy@hornetsecurity.com is my email address. Or I'm still kind of in lurker mode out on Mastodon. I'm out on the infosec.exchange instance of Mastodon, but I do touch base out there occasionally. You can also reach me on Twitter at @aserwich. Not as active there as I used to be, but that's also a place you can reach me as well. Now, a quick word about Hornet Security. So really, we see our mission as empowering all organizations of all different types and sizes to focus on their core business by allowing us to help them, manage and maintain their security, right? We focus on the security so your organization can focus on what it is you do, right? And we really see our vision being us as the guardian of companies worldwide that utilize M365 for their business. And the value proposition, how we get there, is the fact that we offer the most comprehensive cloud security solution for Microsoft 365 on the market today, which includes email security, compliance, and backup. And we're going to be talking more about kind of the compliance side of this equation today, but I'll kind of mention a couple of the other areas as we step through the UI a little bit later today. Now, I always like to spend just a second or two on this slide. We are a worldwide company, so we do have offices all around the world. We have data centers all around the world. The office is headquartered in Germany, but we have offices in the UK, US, Spain, Canada, kind of all over the place, right? So chances are we have boots on the ground in whatever country that you are part of. So again, we are global. How did it all start? Well, the story here is that we've been around for 15 years now. Well, yeah, 15, 16 years now, right? We really got our start back in 2007, kind of began the process of internationalization in 2008. And as we've gone along, the company's made a number of strategic acquisitions, kind of some of the more frequent ones, or the more recent ones being EveryCloud, Spamina, Altero, Zero Spam, and our latest acquisition, IT Seal, which brought in some of that security awareness services that you see inside of our product stack. So again, we've been around for 15, 16 years and been providing great security products that whole time. So let's talk about what you're here to listen about today, and that is 365 Permission Manager and the fact that you can use it to elevate your compliance for Microsoft 365. And really what this session is going to focus on are three key areas, right? And we're going to do this via a combination of PowerPoint and live demo. So first, we're going to talk about, what is 365 helps you address what is shared and how within 365. It allows you to configure and monitor sharing policies, and then using those policies, identify violation and delegate audits. So really, we have kind of a three-step process that this product is doing for you. Again, understand what is shared, configure policies that are in line with your own internal company policies, and then identify violations based on those defined policies. And sounds like a lot, but you're going to kind of see how this all comes together here as I step through the content. So before we get to that, let's talk about why you need 365 Permission Manager. So, if you've managed 365 for any length of time, you know that there has been, how do I want to put it? Setting and configuration sprawl is probably a good way to explain it, right? I mean, you think about the sheer number of portals, the sheer number of settings, the different places that you can go to configure multiple things. It's grown and increased over the years, right? And the problem with that is it's become a major headache for administrators or CISOs to get an accurate picture of where they are with items shared via SharePoint or items shared via OneDrive for Business, right? There's no easy way to go in and audit exactly where your organization is at from a sharing and permission standpoint across those services. Sure, you can do it, but you have to go to multiple different places. In some cases, you actually need to call some APIs via PowerShell against the 365 service or interface with Graph directly. There's no simple, easy way to do it. And this is what Permission Manager is really designed to help with. Permission Manager, again, 365 Permission Manager is a tool that is designed to look at SharePoint Online, look at OneDrive for Business, give you an accurate understanding of where you're at from a sharing and permissions perspective, and then give you the tools to easily wrap your hands around that and manage those settings based on policies you define. And that kind of ties into a lot of the larger challenges that we see in 365 today, right? So a lot of what I've talked about so far, kind of focuses specifically on the management of 365 infrastructure. I've talked about all the different portals, all the different way of configuring things, complicated permission structure. So if I look at SharePoint specifically, there is, how many different places are there to define permissions inside of a SharePoint Online document library? You've got permissions in the global 365 settings, you've got SharePoint settings, you've got SharePoint site settings, you've got SharePoint document library settings, share settings, or share folder settings, and file settings as well. And that's not to mention the old legacy SharePoint UIs are still out there on top of the newer, kind of more modern SharePoint configuration pages. So it creates this huge issue, right? And if you're interested in this particular topic, kind of diving into all the different areas where you can define permissions and settings inside of SharePoint, Philip Gallia, one of our product managers, and I, we did a podcast episode specifically about that. Actually, I think it's coming out this week. I don't think it's out there yet, but I think it's coming out this week. Just go to any major podcasting platform and search for the Security Swarm podcast. We're going to be talking about that topic specifically if you're interested. But getting back to this, I talked about the management of M365 infrastructure and the challenges there. Data access is a huge struggle for administrators and CISOs inside of 365. You've got risky default configurations. So out of the box, the permissions are not ideal for security and retaining data. There's, again, I kind of mentioned already, there's no easy way to identify external sharing exposure. Again, this is kind of all the stuff I've talked about a little bit already. And then governance ultimately becomes an issue on top of that, right? The inbox tools, while you can do it, it becomes complicated. When the auditor comes knocking, there's no easy way to kind of showcase that information to the auditor. There's a lack of reporting, and that's all not to mention the all or nothing approach to restrictions that M365 kind of takes on some items. And then finally, kind of a secondary concern is the fact that orphan permissions and resources can get left behind. So if you've ever defined permissions on a SharePoint object or OneDrive object and gone and gotten rid of that user account out of Azure AD, you know, you'll still see the permission in there in a lot of cases, and instead of the actual username, you'll just see a random UID, whatever the UID of the user was associated with that folder or file, right? And it becomes difficult to audit that after the fact. So more concretely, again, answering the question of why do you need 365 Permission Manager, kind of boiled it down to a couple of real world scenarios here. And I've got a few more real world scenarios after this to kind of explain the value proposition of Permission Manager here. A couple of key points here. Again, putting my system engineer hat back on, access typically only ever increases. It never really gets reduced, right? How many times has your HR manager or your CISO or your IT director come to you and said, you know what, let's organization-wide dial back the permissions, right? Yeah, that rarely happens, right? No user goes into the team and says, hey, we no longer work with this freelancer, let's remove his access. Granted, there are those organizations that do that, and if you do, hats off to you. That's awesome, fantastic. But the fact is, the vast majority of organizations do not have that operational maturity, right? Audits are never done by the people who understand the data and access granted to it. I always look at this bullet point from the perspective of old file server audits, right? I remember the days where we'd have a Windows file server on premises and map drives, right? And we'd get asked, hey, can you go in here and clean up this folder structure, right? Well, me as the IT guy, I'd be looking at that. I'd say, okay, yeah, I see this is the finance folder here, but yeah, it looks good to me, but I don't really understand how the data works or who really needs access to it, right? 365 Permission Manager can help with this. I'm going to show you how, because really the tool allows you to empower department heads as well as your IT staff and CISO to do some of these policy audits that I'm going to show you here in a little bit. And then finally, you know, like I said, M365 really does have that all or nothing approach when controlling sharing. And really, it kind of creates a problem for specific situations. And again, Permission Manager can help with this. So let's give a couple of concrete situations as to why you may need 365 Permission Manager. And these are some real life cases, right? So inherited group access. So let's say a new employee is added to an existing group, right? And this gives them access to all sites, folders, and files for that group, and has access to which, and you know, that group maybe has some confidential information in there. What's nice about this is if I'm a department head and I'm the head of a SharePoint site, I can see that, oh, hey, I get an alert from Permission Manager that, hey, this new user now has access to my department SharePoint site. Is that okay? And I'm given an option of, you know, clicking yes, this is approved for business use, or I'm given another button that just simply removes that access, right? So I'm given a nice simple two-choice option, and I'll show you how that works here in a little bit. The other place where I've seen this as being helpful is in those situations where maybe an existing internal user is moving departments, right? Maybe Bob is moving from HR to finance. He moves out of the HR group, IT assigns him to the finance group in Azure AD. Now he's got access to all of these financial SharePoint libraries. We can throw an alert that says, hey, Bob now has access to these financial SharePoint repositories. Is that okay? Kind of the same thing, watching for that inherited group access. Another real life use case here is default site configurations in M365. I've kind of already mentioned that the default settings in M365 can be disastrous in some cases. Like the one I always talk about here is actually listed on the screen here. The default behavior in Teams is to create anonymous, publicly accessible links whenever somebody shares a file over chat. Now, Granted, it would be difficult for a threat actor to take advantage of that, but not impossible, right? So you think about anonymous public accessible links, that's a problem, especially if somebody inadvertently shares it with somebody outside of the organization. Now you've lost governance of that link and whatever it was linking to, right? This is where you can define policies in 365 Permission Manager to keep an eye on the default site configuration in M365, raise a flag when it doesn't match up with what you want it to be, and then provide easy, actionable service to your CISO, IT staff, or department head to fix that when it detects that it's not correct. Another real world case here, an employee leaves the company, right? There are those organizations that do, like I said, a really good job when it comes to properly managing permissions or offboarding a user, but there are those organizations that struggle with that process, right? Maybe the IT staff is overworked, maybe they don't have good processes in place. Maybe they're a small business and you've got, again, I always pick on Bob from accounting, but maybe Bob from accounting is the guy that's managing the M365 infrastructure and doesn't know any better, right? Permission Manager can be used to help right-size those permissions after an employee has left the organization. So it's another kind of practical area where Permissions Manager can come in and really help you stay compliant and keep your permissions at the level of least access. This one I really like, and I'm actually, let me see if I'm gonna skip forward to this slide to talk about it actually, because really what we're talking about here is something that's very common with a lot of departments within most organizations. The example I always give is marketing, because marketing teams tend to work with a lot of external freelancers. Maybe you have a video editor, maybe you have a graphic designer that you're working with outside of the organization, copy editor, maybe you work with a PR agency. Marketing seems to utilize a lot of external freelancers, and this is kind of the life cycle that this particular use case really highlights. And we call it the audit life cycle, right? But I jokingly call it the CISO happiness life cycle, right? And this is kind of the life cycle that really helps keep your CISO happy, and by extension keeps your auditor and, well, your organization happy when the auditor doesn't ding you on any violation in terms of SharePoint or OneDrive for Business. So again, we're using an example of a marketing team here, right? And we're going to start at the top middle here. So the CISO uses 365 Permission Manager to create a policy, and the marketing site is in line with policy at the baseline, right? Everything's fine. As we move to the right here, we see that, hey, we are working with some sort of external freelancer. A user in the marketing department shares a file with that external party. The site violation of the site policy is now violated because we have the flag set to not allow external sharing. So Permission Manager alerts the marketing manager and offers two options. One button fixes the violation, closes the external share right then and there, or they have an option to approve that for business use. They are signing in blood that this is allowed for business use. And you're going to be quizzed later, so I hope everybody's paying attention. Everything in Permission Manager is audited. It is all tracked in our audit log, which I'll show you in the live demo later. But the marketing manager is given two simple options to choose from at that point in time. So at that point in time, the marketing manager sees this message, goes and talks to their employee and says, hey, I see you shared file X with that external freelancer. Is that something you need? Yes, we're actively working with them on project B, whatever, and we still need it. The manager approves it for business use, and you can set it inside of the policy to automatically revisit that violation after 3 months, after whatever period of time you define, and that marketing manager will get pinged again in this example 3 months from then, goes back to their user and says, hey, are you still working with that person on that project? And if they say no, we're all done, then at that point in time, they go ahead and seal off that external share. And again, we flip back up to the CISO being happy because, the site policy, the site is now adhering to company policy at that point, right? So that's kind of the life cycle, at least in this particular example that we're talking about. And if there are any questions as we go along, be sure to use the questions form in GoToWebinar to go ahead and ask those questions. If it's something I can go ahead and kind of organically address as we're going along, I'll do so. If not, like I said, I'll get to it at the the Q&A at the end of the session. So, like I said earlier, I do not believe in killing people with PowerPoint. So we are going to jump over to a live demo. So let me switch to this. We're going to go to Microsoft Edge. So you all should be seeing Microsoft Edge now, and you should be seeing the Permission Manager UI. Normally, I have a co-host with me on these webinars that I can ask and make sure that they see everything properly. But I have to rely on all of you nice people. And if for some reason you can't see the Permission Manager UI inside of the web interface for GoToWebinar here, let me know in the questions form. Just use the questions form to let me know that, hey, Andy, I can't see your screen, but it looks like everything's fine on my side. So with that, you can see here that I'm logged into the 365 Permission Manager dashboard. This tool, like all of our other awesome security products at Hornet Security, can be accessed just by going to CP control panel, cp.hornetsecurity.com. And you can log in from there and access all of our tools, including Permission Manager. So this is a demo environment, and what's kind of funny about this is we certainly learned firsthand how difficult it is to manage permissions natively in SharePoint and OneDrive for Business while we were setting up our demo environment. So again, this is a demo environment, so there's not a ton of production data in here, but there's enough here to give you an idea of kind of what the tool looks like and how it works. So on the dashboard here, we can see kind of a quick overview. You know, what's the compliancy health of the organization? Ideally, all of these are green, but realistically, that's probably not going to be the case, you know, given your organization. I can see that, you know, I've got 7, you know, items that are compliant, 8 that are non-compliant. You see, we kind of delineate between SharePoint sites, Teams sites, OneDrive for Business, et cetera, et cetera. As violation trends over time, you'll see that show up in kind of like a line graph format here. But again, this is a demo environment, so we don't really have a ton of production data in there. And again, you can kind of see how the audited sites break down based on policy. Now, Permission Manager, like I said, really breaks down into 3 different steps, right? 1, create a policy. 2, flag any deviations from policy. And 3, provide CISOs, IT staff, and department heads the option of fixing those violations, right? So we always start by going to the compliance policy section of this tool. So in here, we can see all the different policies that are associated with the organization. So you see, I've got a number of different policies in here already, right? You can add a new policy right from this view if you want, or if we want to edit an existing policy, I can select the, you know, the 3-dot menu here and go to edit policy. And in here, I can see, you know, what all the different, again, what type of blueprint should my SharePoint sites or OneDrive accounts be adhering to within Permission Manager, right? And the first thing I want to highlight here is this set as default switch. You can see here that this is the default policy for SharePoint and OneDrive accounts and team sites as well. With Permission Manager. So if a site gets created and no policy is given to it as part of that process, this is the policy that will be applied to that site, and you will get alerts associated with this policy. So that's kind of your catch-all policy, right? And as you can, you know, scroll down here, you see all the different settings and things that we can alert on. So for example, if I look through the sharing section here, I've got 2 different columns. I have internal sharing violations and external sharing violations. Do I want to alert on a new user or group giving access to the site? That's what this switch is for. Do I want to alert on any items that are shared with everyone? That's what this item is for. Indirect group access. That's what I was talking about earlier, where and maybe you have an existing user that gets assigned to a group, and because of inherited group access, they now have rights to, files or folders that fall within this policy. You can alert on that as well. The big ones, right, especially when we're talking about the governance of data, on the right-hand side here are the external sharing items that you can alert on, items shared with external users, items with anonymous links, public group privacy levels. Definitely, in most cases, you want to be using those, at least be alerted on those things. That way you're aware of them, right? You could also define and be flagged on site configuration options too, right? So if I want to be alerted if the site configuration level is set to a certain thing, a certain level, I can do that here. If I want to make sure that the default sharing links are configured in a certain way, I can do that here. Guest access expiration, make sure that it's expiring after 30 days. I can alert on that here as well. So a lot of different ways that we can alert on sharing and site configuration settings for, again, SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, or Teams sites as well. In terms of auditing, trusted sharing and alerts, that's what this other tab here is for. You've got a number of different options in here. So first off, trusted sharing. So let's say you work with a, again, I'll go back to the marketing example I was using earlier. Maybe your marketing department is working with a PR agency on the regular. Maybe you have an annual contract, right? You're going to be working with them on the regular. You can put that organization's domain in here, and it won't be a violation if files are shared with them, right? So it's kind of like these are the organizations I trust my organization to share with, and that's what this field here is for. Audited, how often do you want the policy to be audited by somebody? So that's what the full audit field here is. You can see it's set to 3 months currently. I can set it to 6 months or yearly as well. So a couple different options in there, just to be alerted to somebody to come in and take a look and make sure that the site, OneDrive account, or the team site is adhering to company policy, again, on a regular basis. What about violation grace period? Let's say, again, I'm going to pick on Bob from accounting. Bob shares a file externally that is now in violation of the company policy for his OneDrive accounts. How soon do we want to start raising alerts for that, right? That's what the violation grace period here is for. And then alerts, how often do you want alerts to be sent? Do you want to see them immediately? Do you want to see them once an hour, every 8 hours? A couple of different options there based on the particular policy. So again, right now we're not changing anything. We are just defining a blueprint for how we want our SharePoint site to look like, our OneDrive for business accounts, or our team sites. What do we want them to look like? That's what the blueprint is for. And again, if there are any of the also sysadmins out there or engineers like me, I kind of liken this to desired state configuration, if you're familiar with that, right? I'm going to define a way that I want my object to look like. That's what we're creating here. We're creating a blueprint for what we want our sites to adhere to. So from there, I'm going to discard those changes and go over to the Explore Sites view. And once you've assigned a policy to a site, you come over here, you can see how your sites are stacking up based on the policy that's assigned for them. So as we scroll through the list here, you can see green is good, obviously, right? So I can see, hey, this admin team is compliant with policy, and it's assigned the internal only policy, or this site here from Bob Sullen looks like this was a backup recovered site, but it's assigned the public policy and it's compliant with that policy. So you can also see what the violations are. So this entire org site is not compliant with policy. So it gives you kind of a nice quick overview of where you're compliant or not. The other nice thing about this view is you've got a couple of different options here. So you can see here that this particular site, I'm going to use the admin team site here as an example, does not contain any anonymous access. So there are no anonymous links in this site, but there are some site level permissions that grant organization-wide access, or at least one item within the site that has organization-wide access. So everybody in my org can see something inside of that site, whether it's this whole site itself or a specific object maybe buried deep down inside of the hierarchy of that folder structure. The other thing that's nice from this view here is I can see, This particular site does not contain any items that have external guest access. And what's nice here is you can actually filter based on this. So if I want to see everything within my M365 tenants that has external guest access, I can click this and it will filter it based on that. So I can see that, again, I'm always picking on Bob in accounting, but Bob here has some files that are shared externally. And surprise, is not compliant with internal policy, with the internal only policy, right? And what's nice about this is if I'm the IT staff or the admin, I can come in here and I can actually audit this right here. And this is the part where we are actually making changes, actually fixing things. That's where I come in here and I can be like, okay, so there's no site configuration violations. What do we got here? There are no internal sharing violations, but we do have one item shared with external users. So if I click next here, again, so there's no site or group violations. Again, kind of a wizard step, kind of a step-by-step wizard here, right? So I'm step 2, there's no violations that need to be called out here. Step 3 is where we're gonna actually see those item violations. So I can see here that, hey, this end user guide PDF has been, so there's a new external user, Mr. Rainfall at onetest.us has been granted write access to this and it is non-compliant. So here, I can actually look at the permissions of the object if I want to right here in this view. And I've got this zoomed in quite a bit so you all can read it depending on your screen size. Normally the viewing of the permissions is much better than this, but because I'm zoomed in quite a bit, you can't, I have to scroll through it. But I can get kind of a general overview of the permissions here. And then I've got my 2 options here, right? I can either fix it or I can approve the violation. So again, I'm looking at this right now as I would if I was IT staff or a CISO. And if I'm gonna say, you know what, that doesn't look like it should be shared, I'm gonna go ahead and fix that. And here it warns you, hey, you are about to remove access to one item, right? So it does give you kind of a quick heads up that, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Well, yeah, I'm going to pick on Bob from accounting again. I'm going to fix his violation and bring him into compliance with company policy, right? So, yeah, the incremental audit has now been completed successfully. And I get, kind of an overview of the things that were changed, right? So I see the violation reason. No violations were approved. One was fixed. Total violations, right? Done. And now, if I go look at Bob Sullen, you can see that the external site access is no longer there, right? So I've kind of fixed that. So again, that's me looking at this from a IT staff or CISO perspective. What if I'm just a department head? Maybe I'm the head of marketing, right? And my IT staff has given me the purview to make some of these corrections myself. That's what the simplified to-do view is. So you saw in the policy earlier where I could define like how frequently we want the alerts, immediately, every 8 hours, once a day, right? So in the case that, I'm the marketing department head and I'm the department head of the SharePoint site, I can get those alerts and I'll get just an email alert, right? And says, hey, site violations have been detected. Click this link. We have a button right in the middle of the email to review the violation. It'll actually bring me, again, I'm pretending to be the marketing manager, it'll bring me into the simplified to-do view where I simply just have a list of violations, what the compliance state is, and 2 buttons, right? Either approve or fix. So again, let's say I'm working with Bob's comms site again, right? And okay, I've reviewed this and I've determined that, okay, this is needed for business use. I'm gonna go ahead and approve that, right? And again, confirming, hey, do you want to approve this violation? And again, I'm signing in blood that this is approved for business use. If I go to the activity log, again, switching, right? I can go in here and I can see that, hey, these changes have been approved. And this is where you'll see all of those audits, all the logs, people have logged in. This is the particular page that your auditor is going to be very interested in looking at, or maybe your CISO. Again, everything is logged right here inside of this activity log. And you can export this to CSV as well too if you need to send it out to an auditor or something like that. But again, everything is audited right there inside of the activity log. So I see I've got some questions coming in here. I'm going to get to those in just a second, folks. There's one other thing I want to talk about really quick before I get to those. And so if we look at the Explore Sites view here again, there's one other area I wanted to call out before we finish up, and that is, well, two other areas. Sorry, I lied. There's two other areas I want to call out. The first is quick actions. So quick actions, these are some actions that we've kind of determined through some of our early testing that these are some of the most frequent tasks that users are going to want to use as part of this tool, right? You know, we've got 4 items in here that are kind of in the quick actions. Set external sharing levels, that allows you to go through and very quickly right size external sharing levels. Maybe you want to clean up orphaned user accounts, remove the everyone permissions from within your M365 infrastructure, or revoke access for a particular user or group. So again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through each of those right now, but that's a nice quick hitter area for getting a lot of stuff done quickly. The other thing I want to call out is this view as view. And this is exceptionally powerful because what it allows me to do is it allows me to select an Office 365 organization, and more specifically, a specific user within that 365 organization, and actually see the infrastructure from their point of view. So again, I'm always picking on Bob in my demos here. So I'm currently viewing my M365 SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive accounts from Bob's point of view. So I can see exactly what Bob has access to, and you know, the world is Bob. And why is this useful? There's a couple of different reasons why, right? Maybe I suspect Bob of being a malicious insider, right? Maybe he's an insider threat. Hopefully not, but maybe, you know. The other situation where this is particularly useful is, let's say Bob's machine gets compromised for some reason. Okay, now as part of a security incident resolution, I need to go see what is the blast radius, right? What's the potential damage? What did Bob have access to that I now need to go look at and investigate as part of a security incident? That's useful from this perspective as well too. The other case is, you know, maybe I want to write, you know, let's say Bob is in accounting again, and I've been tasked with making sure that Bob's permissions are right sized based on company policy. Again, I can come in here and view the infrastructure as Bob, right? So a lot of different use cases there, really powerful tool there to kind of check out and see specifically what Bob has access to. One final area in here that I want to show, and I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to be really quick here. If I want to drill down and see specific folder structures, I can do that from this tool as well. So again, I was in the Explore Sites view there. I hit Explore over on the right-hand side for that particular site, in this case, Bob's Com site. And I can come in here and I can see that familiar folder view that you're used to seeing in so many tools out there for IT professionals, right? So if I want to come in here and drill down into Bob's Com documents, and it looks like Bob's got a Firefox installer out here for some reason, you know, what are the particular permissions for that file, right? So this is useful in those cases where somebody has broken inheritance partway through the folder structure, and you're trying to figure out exactly where and how and right size that. So that really helps in this particular situation. So with that, we're running out of time. I'm going to get to your questions, I promise. I'm going to hop back over to the slide deck really quick here, and then we will get to the Q&A in just a second. So again, kind of a summary, right? 365 Permission Manager helps you analyze, manage, and right-size permissions across OneDrive for Business, SharePoint Online, and Teams sites as well, right? We make it easy, simple to use through a single web interface, helps you govern compliance, and gives you much better compliance monitoring than you would get with native inbox tools. So if you're interested in kind of where that stacks up inside of our offerings, that is going to be part of 365 Total Protection Plan 4, which is coming soon, all the way on the right-hand side. As you start on the left, we start with some of our basic email security features. for 365, and as you move to the right, more features are added. Like for example, Plan 2, you get advanced threat protection, email archiving, email continuity. Plan 3, we add in the backup components of that. And Plan 4 includes everything I just talked about, along with security awareness services and things like that. So, and again, a lot of the stuff you can get ad hoc too, piecemeal. If you have any questions on any of that, I'm not a sales guy, nor do I play one on TV. You can always email sales@hornetsecurity.com for any information or questions on any of that. So, again, I'm going to get to your questions, I promise. I just have one other slide I want to follow up, and I want to do the prize card drawing really quick too, and then I've got my Q&A slide after that. First off, how would you like us to follow up with you, if at all? If you would like to be signed up for a newsletter, you can put option 1, just a number 1 inside of the questions form and hit enter. If you'd like to try a free trial of 365 Permission Manager, put a number 2 in the questions form and hit enter. Or if you would like to have kind of a one-on-one demo with one of our product experts and go way more in depth than I did as part of this demo, put number 3 in the questions form and hit enter, and we will get that taken care of for you. So while you guys do that, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the questions really quick. Let's see. What steps can be taken to create a comprehensive permission matrix that documents all of the permissions assigned to each user and group within the M365 environment? So that's a good question, Donald. I didn't show it in the demo, but there is a reports section inside of Permission Manager. It's just in the left-hand tree. You go in there and you can actually print out permissions reports that will show you exactly that. So that is covered by the product for sure. Looking at a couple other questions here while you guys put in how you would like us to follow up with you. What are the best practices for auditing permissions in M365 to identify potential security risks and unauthorized access? You know, that's a good question, Miles. That's a combination of different things, right? You want to have even outside of what we're talking about with just Permission Manager, you have to have a comprehensive security strategy in mind for 365. Permission Manager is certainly part of that because it helps you simplify and gain visibility into SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, and Teams sites as well. But you have to also worry about Azure AD. You have to have proper policies in place to keep an eye on Azure AD. It's just a lot of security best practices. It's a really broad question. I don't really have, I could spend a whole webinar specifically talking about that question, and maybe I will set up a webinar specifically to cover that, because that's a really good question. But again, it's kind of a holistic security strategy there, right? And Permission Manager is specifically part of that. Let's see. How can we set up conditional access policies in Azure AD to control access to M365 services based on various user location, various factors like user location, device compliance, risk levels? Yeah, so that's another good question, Donald. That's really not a Permission Manager thing. For those that aren't aware, conditional access in 365 allows you to control access to 365 services based on certain conditions. We actually did a webinar about that included some talk of conditional access. I want to say that was a year or two back. I'll see if I can dig that up and include a link to that webinar in the follow-up email. That way you can take a look at that and hopefully get that question answered for you. So there's a few other questions I'm going to get to in just a second on the Q&A slide. So I want to get to the quiz time. So again, we've got 3 Amazon gift cards to give out, one $25 gift card and 2 $50 gift cards. But I'm going to ask you questions now, right? So first person to answer these questions, I've got 3 of them. First person to answer these questions will get the Amazon gift card. So is everybody ready? So what you're going to do is you're going to type your answer into the questions form. I know it seems weird, but that's the way that you have to talk to me. You're going to use the questions form to type in your answer and press enter. And the first person to answer the question correctly gets the gift card. And I'm going to start with an easy one here. So this is for the $25 Amazon gift card, and it's a true or false. So you all have 50-50 chance if you weren't paying attention. So true or false, all activity in 365 Permission Manager is audited. True or false? I see Brian Kelly has it true. Brian, you are the winner of the $25 Amazon gift card. Well done, my friend. Well done. All right, question 2. This is for a $50 Amazon gift card. Now we're going to see how well you were all paying attention. So here's the question. Again, this is not a true or false. This is an you actually have to type in the answer on this one. So besides SharePoint Online, what other M365 service does 365 Permission Manager allow you to assign permissions to? Pierre with the answer of OneDrive is our very first respondent. Pierre, you are the winner of a $50 Amazon gift card. All right. And our third and final question here, again, you're going to have to type in the answer on this one, and this is for the second of the two $50 Amazon gift cards. Are your keyboard fingers ready here? Here we go. So 365 Permission Manager empowers CISOs, IT staff, and what other group of people in your organization to easily manage permissions for SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business and Teams. A little bit of a more tricky one here. Managers. So I've got Patrick was the first answer. Patrick, you are the winner of our second $50 Amazon gift card. So well done, all of you. Again, we will be following up via email with all of you to get you your gift card. So thank you for playing, everyone. And I have a few other questions to get to. If you have any questions that you haven't asked yet, I know I'm 2 minutes over time, but I want to take a look at least one of these other questions. If I don't get to all the questions, we'll be sure to reach out via email, or sometimes I do a follow-up blog post that contains a full list of the questions. We'll get your question answered in some way, shape, or form. But just taking a quick look at the questions that are remaining here. Let's see. A question from Miles here. In Microsoft 365 environment with multiple tenants, what strategies can be employed to centralize permission management and streamline administrative tasks across tenants? Yes, that is a difficult problem, especially if you're an MSP. Just because you asked that question, Miles, I'm kind of gonna guess that you're an MSP because that's or you're a large organization with multiple tenants, right? I think the other common area I've seen that come into play is your organization maybe has made acquisitions, and so now you're in a place where you're managing multiple tenants, which is kind of a pain, right? So, but you got to utilize tools, right? Is really what it comes down to. And Permission Manager can certainly help you manage tools across multiple tenants, or manage permissions and access across multiple tenants, right? So Permission Manager will certainly help you with that. Let's see. Can 365 Permission Manager integrate with other third-party identity and access management solutions such as Azure Active Directory or Okta? That's a good question, Donald. Today it cannot. That said, all of our services at Hornet Security are API driven. So there is a Hornet Security API that you can tie into. So when I say they aren't integrated, there's no direct integration, but if you want to get fancy with scripting and API calls under the hood, you could, sure. But do we officially support integrations with the tool today? No, but I'll be sure to share that feedback with our product group. Make sure they have that information for maybe a future iteration of the product, right? Can Permission Manager automate the process of granting or revoking permissions based on predefined rules or conditions? No, today it simply alerts on a policy violation, and then somebody, either the CISO, the IT staff, or department head, has to go in and actually take action. I get what you're saying here, Miles, with this question, and I can see where that would be useful. And again, just like the previous question, I'll be sure to share that feedback with our product development leads, so that they know that there's some interest there for future versions of the product. So with that, I've already kept all of you after 5 minutes, and thankfully my head cold ridden voice has managed to hold out this long. So hopefully you all found value in today's webinar. I hope to see you again for a future Hornet Security webinar. And again, if you have any follow-up questions, you think of questions after the fact, you can always reach me at andy@hornetsecurity.com. Or if you have more sales specific questions, you can go to sales@hornetsecurity.com as well for more information. If you come to me for sales questions, I'm going to direct you over there anyway. Don't ask me sales questions, but I'll get you, at least get you to somebody who can help, if not me directly. So with that, I'm going to let you all go. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one. We'll catch you later. Thanks for watching.